let's just take this one step at a time. This is the big verse that's often debated.
Right.
No one can come to me unless. Now this, the Calvinist, like James White, assumes this is total inability right here. No one can. He'll go on and on and on about no one can. No one is able. No one. This proves total inability from birth. Now, we're not denying that there's an inability here. Okay. The Jewish people whose eyes are now being blinded in their rebellion due to them closing their own eyes and him now using parables and blinding them in their rebellion, that's also a cannot on our system.
Yeah.
They're just assuming that the cannot here is due to an innate condition from birth, this default condition. White actually calls it a default condition. John MacArthur, another well-known Calvinist, says they're pre-programmed to believe lies. And so this no one can is God's fault. Now, they would never call it God's fault. They would say it's a default condition. But what is a default condition if not what God has ultimately decided will come to pass if he's the one who decrees whatsoever comes to pass, including their default condition? They're pre-programming. Who's doing the pre-programming if not God? Right. And so they might not come right out and say they blame God for this default condition, but their systematic implies that it's God's doing, not the individual's choice. And what we're saying, no, that removes their blameworthiness. They're blameworthy because they refuse to listen to Moses. They're blameworthy because they've become old wineskins that can't take the new wine, because they closed their eyes. They weren't born without eyes. They closed them. They had eyes. God gave them the ability to understand. He gave them a conscience. They chose to do this. No one can come to me is a statement about an ability of those who have grown in their calloused rebellion against the things of God. Now, I will also say there's a universal aspect of this in the sense that how will they believe in one whom they've not heard? As Paul says in Romans chapter 10.
Right.
That's a cannot of Scripture. You cannot believe in one whom you've not heard. Guess what? Cornelius could not believe in Jesus until he heard about Jesus. He needs the revelation to do that. Doesn't mean that he's just an innate condition that can't believe God the Father, because obviously he did believe God the Father. He was a God-fearing man long prior to knowing who Jesus was.
Even to that point, when you bring up Romans 1, Paul's point there is that they can't know Christ unless they've heard him.
Yeah.
But he does point to the fact that there are general revelations everywhere. And then if someone will humble their heart to general revelation, that even miraculously, the Lord will make a provision.
Yeah.
For, the general revelation is the provision. It's an introductory provision. It's his grace to all of mankind. Look at everything around you. It points to a single designer. If you follow that track in faith and humble yourselves, then I will be faithful to provide you the answer of Christ, which is a wonderful statement, and it fully, proves your point that you're making there.
Yeah, many of the Calvinist interpretation of Romans 1 is horrendous because they start at verse 18, when in reality it's verse 17, the righteous will live by faith, contrasted with those who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. And what the Calvinist does is they skip verse 17, they go right into verse 18, and they just describe, this is every man from birth. They all trade the truth in for lies. They all suppress the truth in unrighteousness. They all do this by nature. And the verse never says that. It says the righteous live by faith, but they're those who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, despite the fact that they know the qualities and the attributes of God clearly made known through this revelation, and they've traded the truth. You can't trade truth you don't know. You have to know the truth in order to trade it. And that is an act of the will. It's an act of the will to close your eyes to the truth, to trade it in for lies, which is exactly what he's describing those who say there is no God in their heart, to those who explain away the clearly revealed truth, not those who were just born in this condition, they can't help it, as the Calvinistic system entails. And so going back to verse 44, no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. We all believe that, by the way. The Father must draw them. What's the means of drawing? Now, ironically, even James White in his book says that the means of drawing is through his teaching. Amen. That's exactly right. The Father, by means of teaching, Hebrews chapter 1 says, in the days of old, the Father taught us by the means of the prophets, but now he speaks to us through his Son. So there's a shift that's taking place from the revelation of the Father drawing through Moses and the prophets, Old Testament prophets and the Old Testament scriptures, to now he's drawing us through his Son. When I'm lifted up, I will raise all men, I will draw all men to myself. Through what? Through the gospel. The gospel of Jesus Christ, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So it used to be through the Father, now it's through his Son. So the drawings of John chapter 6 and John chapter 12 are two different drawings. The drawing of the Father to the Son are the drawing of his own, who are the remnant of believers of Jesus in the Messiah, being drawn to the Son so as to prepare the church and to establish the church prior to his crucifixion and resurrection, so that he may draw all men to himself through the gospel. And when you understand that, it all clicks, and Calvinism just goes, you begin to see Calvinism as just this what kind of distraction that has nothing to do with what the context is of what's happening here in the New Testament. And so, yes, we need the drawing. We need. How will they believe in when they have not heard? They have to hear. They have to God reveals himself, and it's through that revelation he draws people to himself. Now, you can't assume that drawing is some irresistible drawing for a particular group of people. And again, that's the Calvinistic reading, is that they take this word helko to mean that there's an irresistible thing for a certain number of people that he elected before the foundation of the world. And if he didn't do that, it's because of this pre-programmed default condition from birth that they couldn't believe. All of that's just packed into that verse. And we're going, the verse never says any of those things. It's we think your erroneous reading of Paul out of Ephesians 1 and Romans 9, and you've got those presuppositions. No one can, it's inability, total inability, unless unconditionally elected, do you, and irresistibly grace, the I, and they pack it in that verse. No one can, there's total inability, unless the Father draws him. Oh, that's irresistible grace, because that's irresistible for the elect ones that he's chosen, and he'll raise them up on the last day. That's perseverance, so they're surely going to be saved. And they see tulip just packed into that one verse because they come in with those presuppositions to this text, even though that's not at all what Jesus is revealing. And one of the chapters in the book, I demonstrate how even James White and other Calvinists are real careful to tell evangelists and Christians today that unbelievers don't need to be revealed to tulip theology. This is for the mature. This is for the believer. And they rebuke people, because there's videos out there of Calvinistic apologists talking to atheists, in an apologetic kind of discussions and debates, and you'll hear this Calvinistic apologist bring up tulip to this atheist and try to explain to him tulip theology and try to tell him, unless you're picked, and if you're not picked, then you're not going to, believe because of your condition, and it just goes into this tailspin of apologetics because basically the atheist is going, so I have no choice in the matter. Why are you even talking to me then?
Like the Joe Rogan example that you did a couple episodes on.
Exactly. It makes it nonsense. And so even James White rebukes Calvinists for doing that kind of thing, and then, on the other hand, he's saying Jesus is doing that very thing. Yeah. He's talking to a group of unbelievers who are falling for the wrong reasons and teaching them tulip theology. Why would he do that? If you're saying to Christians they shouldn't be doing that. It just doesn't make any sense. And so, yes, what Jesus is saying here is that, you need the drawing of the Father. You need the teaching of the Father. You need his revelation. We all believe you need his revelation. And you're not going to come unless he does reveal himself, unless he does draw. But who is he going to draw? Who is he drawing to himself? What context is that? It is written in the prophets, and they shall be taught of God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. So he tells us the condition right there of those who come to him. They heard and learned from the Father. If you listen to Moses, you would believe me because he spoke of me. Same thing he's saying here. You heard and learned from the Father, and therefore you're going to come to me, because the Father draws to me those who have believed his word, his truth, his teaching. It is really simple. It's not some esoteric precondition of eternal election before you're ever born, before the foundation of the world, and all the other things imposed upon this text. It is a very simple, intuitive understanding that aligns with the end of the chapter in verse 65 that I already mentioned. He knew from the beginning those who did not believe, and for this reason, he said, this is why I've not granted you for the Father for you to come to the Son. Why? Because he knows the heart condition. He knows you're not a true, genuine believer. Same thing he says here. And so to say this teaches somehow unconditional election, as James White tried to claim in the debate, when he actually lists the condition for us in both of these verses, if you listen and learn from the Father, you would come to me. There's the condition. He knew from the beginning which of them didn't believe. And this was the condition. This is the reason he says this very verse.